Hey everybody, welcome back to World History. We're finishing chapter 27 today. So in terms of what we're doing today in class, we'll have section 5 notes and quiz, the vocab quiz, and then you'll have some time to work on your review guides. So we have two learning objectives today: to define terms such as zaibatsu and to explain the rise of nationalists in Japan leading to World War II. So for the last time this chapter, go ahead and get your notes out and let's get started. So, to provide some context, Japan in the 1920s was moving towards greater prosperity and democracy. Well, in 1929, Emperor Hirohito will become the Emperor of Japan. He'll be on the throne until 1989, so a 60-year rule. Political parties are also going to grow stronger and elect members of the Diet to extend their power. By 1925, all adult men will win the right to vote in Japan, and women will gain the right to vote in 1947. So, we have to talk about economic growth. During World War I, the Japanese economy grew mainly due to trade with the Allies. So the zaibatsu, or powerful business leaders in Japan, exuded influence on the government through donations to political parties and pushed for stronger policies that favored international trade and their own interests. Now, following World War I, Japan will sign an agreement with the US and Britain to limit the size of its navy in the spirit of world peace. Now, that's going to get completely overlooked a couple decades later when we get to World War II, but again, it's all in the point of making peace at the moment. But there are serious problems. The economy in Japan just simply doesn't grow after World War I. And there's a lot of discontent. Rural peasants enjoyed none of the prosperity of those that lived in the major cities. And factory workers were paid such low wages that, again, they were also attracted to socialism. It's also important to understand Japan has one of those cultures that is very unique and heavily rooted in past tradition. But when younger generations in cities started to adopt more Western fashions and reject family authority and those older customs and traditions, conservative military officers are going to blast the government for their corruption and including payoffs by the powerful zaibatsu in the 20s. They're also going to condemn Western influence for undermining basic Japanese values of obedience and respect for authority. This is further influenced by a devastating earthquake in 1923 that struck Tokyo. The earthquake and the widespread fires that resulted in the deaths of over 100,000 people in Japan. That is a major portion of the population in that city, at this point in history at least. Throw on top of this the Great Depression in 1929, trade is going to suffer. Foreign buyers are no longer purchasing Japanese goods, and unemployment as a result will soar. With rural peasants close to starvation, ultra-nationalists are going to gain power. They're also further outraged by racial policies in the US that limited those of Asian descent in the United States. You'll talk more about those policies next year when you take US history. They're going to take great pride in their achievements in history and resent the treatment by the Americans. And the nationalists want to expand. They want raw materials and land for their population. Again, consider Japan is an island. That means space is rather limited. And as a result, there's no room to expand. So now with these militarists in power, military leaders are going to plot to overthrow the government. They're briefly going to occupy Tokyo, and the civilian government will survive, but by 1937 are forced to accept military domination. With this, they're going to crack down on socialists and most democratic freedoms. As a result of this, there is going to be a resurgence and a revival of ancient culture that built a cult around the emperor, who was believed to have descended from the sun goddess. Again, that whole idea of divine right that we've talked about previously. The government is also further going to use schools in Japan to spread the nationalist message and teach students absolute obedience to the emperor and the state, foregoing all other freedoms. So by 1939, their renewed sense of expansion is going to spread to Asia. Now, it's important to remember that nationalists want and demand expansion. The Asian Empire would provide raw materials for Japan's growing population. So they set sights on Manchuria, that northern Chinese province that we talked about last time, a region rich in natural resources that Japanese businesses had already invested heavily there. So it made sense for them to take it over. In 1931, we'll have the Manchurian Incident, where they're going to set up explosives on Japanese-owned railroad tracks and claim that China did it. So the Japanese had a reason to take over, and then, by extension, set up a puppet government in Manchukuo. The League of Nations will heavily condemn this activity, but don't do anything else beyond that. If you remember, the League of Nations is extremely weak. Oh, goodness. Excuse me. Jumping back a little bit, in 1936, Japan is going to ally with two aggressive European powers, Germany and Italy. By 1940, they'll sign the Tripartite Pact, cementing their alliance known as the Axis powers. This alliance and combined Japanese conquest would turn World War II into a brutal, wide-ranging conflict against Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. We'll talk more about that next chapter. All right, that is it for notes for today. So again, you're going to go take the Section 5 quiz, then go study for your vocab quiz. I'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.